Welcome to another episode of the Golden Moment podcast. My name's Mijo Biscan. Today I had an excellent conversation with my excellent friend Daniel Lang. He's currently stuck in South Korea because once the pandemic hit, he hasn't been able to leave. So he's been there for 3 months. And so you'll see in the background, he's in a cafe in South Korea, which is quite typical of him. It wasn't what we had planned, but you just never know what you're going to get with Daniel, and that's one of my absolute favorite things with him. He's just a very unique person. He's an interesting thinker. He's got a big vision for the world and what he does, and so we covered a lot of territory, and we kind of went all over the place, and we talked about the nature of work, doing work that you love if you can, and what gets in the way of that is, we have to often earn a living, and that's why Daniel's involved in artificial intelligence, and his sort of vision for that, which he will go more in depth into, is to sort of remove some of the manual labor or repetitive stuff that we have to do as humans, in enabling people to tap into a larger vision for their life or do more of the things they love and connect with themselves and things like that. So, like I said, we covered a lot of territory. It was really fun. I could have kept talking with him, so there will be a part 2 coming up at some point in the future. And I hope you really enjoy this conversation with Daniel Lang. So I'm here with Daniel Lang, or Daniel Lang, depends where you meet him. Welcome to this podcast, Golden Moment.
Thanks, Neo. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, it's a real pleasure to have you here. I think this will be quite a free range conversation. We might go over lots of different things, but we met in Germany when I was on tour, and some of those shows I did house concerts, and we got in touch with people via couch surfing.
Yeah, couch surfing.
Couch surfing, yeah. I don't know if people know what couch surfing is, but basically a network of places you can get in touch with and crash on their couch if you're traveling. And so sort of the deal was you would put me up for the night and I'd put on a concert. And so I did that, and it was one of my favorite concerts to do. And apart from that, I got to meet you, and then you came and stayed with us in Berlin, and we just struck up a friendship. But and this is the first time we've spoken in ages, and already I'm getting like sore cheeks from laughing. And so yeah, welcome. Maybe just let people know kind of what you're doing now, where you are right now. You're in an interesting setting right there.
Yeah, true. I escaped Morocco, where I was with a friend. Because of the COVID-19 pandemic, I escaped to South Korea, where the government seemed to have things under control. And so now for the last three and a half months, I've been enjoying the warm hospitality and a lot of kimchi down here in South Korea.
Cool. Yeah. And are you cool to tell people what you do at the moment? What you do?
Yes,
yeah.
I have a digital business, or online business, basically. We work with artificial intelligence, consulting and service provider, and we have customers all around the world. Some new ones now in Korea, but also some in Europe, in the United States. Yeah.
Next in Australia, I'm sure.
I hope so. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. So one of the main, there's a bunch of reasons I wanted to talk to you. The podcast is predominantly has been, guests to do with music and creativity and stuff like that. But the reason you came to mind was because of your open kind of thinking, and you have quite a unique way of seeing things, and you seem to really think for yourself. You think through things, and maybe it's kind of that thing of first principles, but kind of pulling back and saying, why do we do things like that? Or what's going on there? So very curious mind. Have you always been that way? Just very curious about the world and, questioning things?
Good question. So that Thanks for all the compliments.
There's more to
I'm
come.
not sure whether I deserve all of them, but I think you touched a couple of interesting topics there, and one of them, of course, the creativity and topic, which I'm very interested in, especially also with a view on education. And I guess creativity and the fun things in life are also one of the reasons why I chose to do artificial intelligence, because there are so many stupid jobs these days, like just mind-numbing, repetitive, boring jobs where people are in a kind of slavery. Like if they had the free choice to do what they want, they wouldn't do their jobs.
Mm.
And so I actually read a book last year on it. It was called, uh, what was it called? It was not "fuck you" jobs, but something like that, right?
Right,
Like it
right.
was a big percentage of the jobs these days are really boring and
Mm, mm,
unnecessary. And
mm,
I've been experimenting with my company in Germany already with a base income. So we paid somebody on an open source project 8, 9 years ago,
mhm,
a base income basically without any conditions to just keep working on what he finds important.
mm,
And so I find the most rewarding experience in life is if you can follow your passion and contribute to something that is bigger than yourself.
mm,
And that's the work with artificial intelligence I'm doing. Is I want to kind of free humanity from those repetitive mind-numbing jobs that are
mm,
meaningless in many ways, and give people the opportunity, give society the opportunity to follow their dreams, to follow their passions. And so a lot of the jobs that I'm kind of automating with my work are really people just looking at parts, checking things, counting things, reading characters in one program and copying them into another. Everything that you could perceive of as hell on earth, we try to automate, while at the same time we are very engaged in social topics. So we
mm,
contribute to open source projects, open data projects, and just try to be a good contributor to a meaningful society and to meaningful projects.
mm.
Yeah,
That's great.
I think that was the first topic of the question.
Yeah,
But
creativity.
yeah,
You can just
and
keep rolling if you want.
no, you touched on something else then, and I missed the second part.
Ah, okay. Yeah, creativity. Yeah, just your open way of doing things and your curiosity. Is that something that's just since you were a
I
kid?
I found I've always liked exploring, but school is kind of at least the school system I grew up in Germany was just the opposite. It
Mm,
takes children at a young age and it teaches them to sit still, and it
mm,
makes them feel bad if they can't. They even
mm.
invented a term for it. They called it, what is it? The people who like to move, right? They
Mm.
attention deficit disorder,
Oh, right, right, yes.
ADD or something, right?
ADD,
I
yeah.
think that's a natural state. You, as a human, you just like to explore, but then society forms you so you fit in somewhere.
Mm.
And I see a lot of better approaches these days. Let's say my niece and nephews, they all went to forest kindergarten,
Oh,
where they
yeah.
are outside in the forest all year long, no
Mm,
matter what weather.
mm.
And I wished I would have had that, because it brings them close to nature. It shows them that nature is not something dirty you need to
Mm,
remove, but
mm,
something we are a part of. We
mm,
are 99% of our DNA is microbial, right? We are
mm.
mostly viruses and bacteria, but most
Yeah.
people don't know about it. So yeah, and to bring us closer to what our nature is, and then reverse things so that we are not in these environments, these totally artificial environments with
Mm.
totally artificial drinks and materials, but the environments that we are evolved to live in.
Mm,
And I think to get there or get back there, we we need to change the education system. We need to teach people about things, about topics. Let's say our microbiome, the bacteria and the viruses we live with, the environment we live with. and to make them see that the solutions we humans usually come up with, they don't fix themselves. Like everything here needs maintenance. Otherwise, within a year or two, it's all broken, right? And nature constantly renews itself. And I would like to get to systems that are more like nature, and where you don't have wastes, but you have cycles, beautiful cycles, and all of this in a way to get to a state that is more rewarding for us and closer to our nature, and to also, with a Buddhist perspective, to reduce suffering, to especially the unnecessary suffering that we create for ourselves and also for other species. Because if you walk through society these days, you don't see most of the suffering that we cause in other species, in animals that we raise just to slaughter them to get their meat, right? And so that's also an important topic to me, to take these first principles, as you said, and apply them to our lives, and not do it in a good and bad purely way, but to see that the systems we are dealing with are very complex, they're hard to understand, and there's a spectrum in almost any issue, and it's not an easy yes or no, but usually to get to a qualified opinion, you need to look deeper into things.
Yeah, I totally agree. Well, on all of that, and especially that last point, I feel like it's something that's missing in conversation, like socially or whatever. There are certain taboo topics, and you're not allowed to have a nuanced perspective on something. Things are black and white, and I think there's a lot of work to do there with allowing people to go deeper.
Do you know the website Wait But Why?
No.
Oh, okay. So I planted something there.
Yeah,
because Wait But Why, they write these long stories, and usually they take some time. They take half a year or even up to 2 years to investigate a topic, and then they write about it on this website, waitbutwhy.com. And last year they started publishing the story of us, which is very insightful in terms of thinking, opinions, and high-rank thinking, low-rank thinking. It talks about the political system in the United States, where they have this big divide between the left and the right. But they also say, okay, there are thinkers that are high-rung. Let's say in the impeachment trial against Trump, there was one Republican, Romney, who said, okay, even though I associate with the Republican Party, I cannot agree with the position they are taking on this. And in my opinion, we need more people who are willing to take a controversial position and who are willing to apply high-rank thinking and not this groupthink or herd thinking.
Yeah, I totally agree. We couldn't use it any more than right now. But and we might as well just sort of stay on this topic of high-rung thinking, low-rung thinking. What do you think prevents people, and I mean, I can see this circling back around to your mission of artificial intelligence, but what do you think prevents people from getting into a mode where they do engage in either deeper thought or high-rung thinking? Because I don't think it's not confined by intelligence, and it's we have so much information we can get into. What do you think prevents people from going to that level?
Like I don't see the full picture, but I think there are many aspects to that. So one of the things I see, for example, is all our social media, all our tools we have these days, because these tools, they also come with AI. And the AI that is used in these tools sometimes can be detrimental to because it optimizes for your attention. Let's say if you have social media, they've learned from the casinos in Las Vegas to trigger you. They send you random nuggets like a slot machine,
Right.
and then they grab your attention so they can sell you advertising, or they can get your data which they can sell again. There's a wonderful guy called Tristan Harris who co-founded this project called a Center for Humane Technology, where the mission is to use those tools properly, not to just grab our attention using very powerful algorithms, but to make those things serve us more. So his hypothesis is that AI is in some ways not there yet to overcome our strengths, let's say in creative thinking or in some other tasks, but it's definitely there already to surpass our weaknesses. And
Right.
one of
Right.
our weaknesses is the attention span. And so Tristan Harris, Center for Humane Technology, they also have a podcast, Your Undivided Attention, which is highly recommended, where they talk about the casinos, how Facebook and Instagram learn from the casinos. And the other thing is Yuval Noah Harari, and he's big on meditation, which I also highly recommend, because he says there might be a limited time span where we can take control of our own mind, and if we don't make it in this time span, we might actually get so drawn into these systems that later on we have no chance of escaping them, because they become more and more powerful with every iteration. And in his latest book, The 21 Questions for the 21st Century, last chapter, he talks about his own meditation practice and how this helped him get to deeper insights and also see things differently. Let's say for him, one of the issues he talks about in a YouTube interview was how he was raised in Israel, and he was believing strongly in the nation state of Israel. And then when he grew up and got older, he found that, oh, how long has this nation state been around? How long has the planet been around? How long has the universe been around? So if the nation state has been around a few thousand years, if you think in the Israeli people, what is the likelihood that it will be around for a million years or a billion years? And so then, can it be the ultimate truth? And so I found that very interesting, because it's also very hard. If we grow up in a society, we are made to believe in our nation, in our religion, and all that. And then we see maybe there's something that is not totally right about it. And if we follow those little things, sometimes we open up a whole new views of the world. And I guess for me, being a digital nomad for over 10 years on and off, I think I've seen so many societies and people living differently that I can easily see that what one society does, or what is a taboo in one culture, is handled very differently in another. And then you're like, oh, this can't be the ultimate truth, right? And yeah.
Yeah. Morality is very, it's relative. It's cultural and all of that stuff.
But I guess, like in terms of the original question, I think seeing that all our perception and everything we do in life basically goes through our mind, like the Buddhists or some meditators have found thousands of years back already, Buddha, and then practicing our mind through meditation techniques and seeing how we can change the world this way. Because if you can switch the filter or adjust the filter, things that in the past were maybe causing a lot of suffering inside yourself, suddenly they become joyful. And I've had this transformation, I think, since we last met. I've been meditating now for 8-9 years. It was probably the best decision I have made in my life too.
I've
Because,
heard that many times from people about
yeah,
meditation.
yeah, and you can do it anywhere. Yesterday I did it on the train down to Busan.
Yeah.
Sometimes I do it out in nature on the trails or wherever. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing on the topic of meditation and, linking it back to what we were talking about for people thinking for themselves. Like, I think one of the difficulties is that we don't question things outside of us, but we also often don't have the reflective questioning either of like who am I, what am I doing, what am I interested in. And in meditation there's such an amazing opportunity to do that. And so from
Exactly. Like when you're sitting there and after a few seconds your mind wanders that direction, like why does it go that direction, right?
Mhm.
And all those things you find out so much about yourself, about also subtle things that are usually hidden from your own conscious attention.
Mm.
Because every thought, like I have this very very how you call it, deterministic view of
Mhm.
things. So I don't think, for example, that there's anything that starts without a prior cause.
Mm.
Like
Mm.
I believe people who are creative, they found a way to make use of their mind and their creativity in a certain way. But I find that often the inspiration comes from the outside world,
Mm.
from maybe a retreat in the countryside and the ravens flying over you, right?
That's right.
So those things are just random things. They're
Mm.
the smallest things. Something you eat, it
Mm.
leaves an imprint on you. Something you see on the street, a little girl passing, all those things leave imprints on you. I
Yeah.
had it today. I was sitting in a in a restaurant which I found on Happy Cow,
Mm.
and a woman and her friend, they walked in, and the restaurant required people to have a mask,
Mm.
and so she didn't have a mask, but I had a spare mask unused in my backpack. So I
Mm.
walked over, gave her the mask, and I only get the idea because when I arrived first time in Korea at the Incheon airport, I flew in and they saw me as the only foreigner not having a mask. So one
Mm.
guy came over and gave me a mask. We took a selfie together, and I guess that kind of only seeded the
Mm.
seed in my head
Right.
that I could offer a mask.
Mm.
And I find that with a lot of things in my life, it's good people, friends, random things that inspire me, that give me ideas, and that I
Mm.
I strive on, because
Mm.
all of those things are also giving me pleasure in terms
Mm.
of the pleasure that you get from exploration or novelty,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Great. That takes us to another topic I wanted to talk to you about, which is travel. Like you're talking about novelty and having experiences, and that everything leaves an imprint on you. And so you're an avid traveler. You've been lots of different places. Like you said, you've been all over the world. You haven't had a home for the last at least 2 years, but before that, you've been just traveling a lot. Um, what do you? What are some of the, I don't know, key things that you think about travel, how they've imprinted you and changed your brain and how you perceive the world? And maybe one of those things you mentioned, like something that's a taboo in one culture is like loved in another culture. But any things that really have like hit you in the face, like, oh wow, that's wild.
I've had many of those moments, of course, and
Mm.
some of them came not even from personal travel, but let's say from friends I met while traveling. So my friend Boris, for example, he told me a story once, and Boris I met in China, and we cycled through Tibet together 13 years ago,
Mm.
and we're still in touch. He's actually yeah, we just hiked earlier this year together, and we went to Morocco together before
Mm.
coming to here. And he related a story to me once when he was cycling through Pakistan, and in the evening he would usually stay in little villages, and then some local man, they would free a house for him and they would sleep there with him. So he never had to stay alone. I was like, that's interesting.
Mm.
So he said in their culture, people never sleep alone.
Mm.
And then I remembered in Kyrgyzstan, we had something similar when I traveled with two French cyclists and we stayed in yurts with local nomads at night. And it was usually the whole family sleeping together in a yurt.
Mm.
And I found that very, very nice. And from a social perspective, the children were all around, nobody ever was alone.
Mm.
And I contrasted that with the society I grew up in, which
Mm.
was in rural Germany. And in our culture, it was common by that time that people would put their children into separate rooms when they
Mm.
were very young.
Mm. Mm.
And it was just, it's to us, it was like breathing air. It's
Mm.
something you don't think about, something you
Yeah.
don't even know that it's
Mm.
maybe particular to your culture.
Yeah.
But I believe it does have a strong imprint on people in terms
Mm.
of how they relate to others later in life, how they
Mm.
relate to their own family, and so I guess of those things there are so many out there that through travel you constantly encounter, and where like I wonder how that came along,
Mm. Mm.
and at the same time then it makes me think what would be the kind of original way, the way that we are by evolution
Mm.
kind of made to be.
Mm.
Because I believe in a lot of ways where we step away from uh, from what's in our nature, we create a lot of pain and suffering.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
maybe these days the loneliness epidemic is one of
Mm.
those issues, or the drug abuse, or people getting addicted to computer games. There's a lot of issues, and I believe many of them can be brought back to maybe living different to what's in our nature, and
Mm.
maybe not even knowing about it. For
Yeah.
example, in a lot of cases, if you have a problem, if you have a symptom, let's say you're ill, these days you go to a doctor and you expect the doctor to do something about it. But so anybody goes to a doctor in most countries, they want some tablets or they want the doctor to do something.
Mm.
If the doctor just says, "Oh, go back and rest for a week," they won't accept that. They want to go back to work. They want to write,
Yeah.
and but in most cases, probably it's the best thing to just rest. Give your
Mm.
body some time. Your body has amazing self-healing powers,
Mm.
incredible immune system. But instead, let's say last year I was sick for 2 weeks. After 2 weeks, I went to a doctor in Singapore,
Mm.
and the first thing the doctor subscribed was antibiotics.
Mm.
But knowing how many bacteria live in my system and how healthy also some of them are for my digestion and for my health, I said, okay, wait, can you give me something else first that doesn't also fight all my good bacteria? But often it's like the first thing is, okay, whatever there is, bacteria are all bad or viruses are all bad, so let's
Mm.
just kill all of them.
Mm.
And this is not good. And at the same
Mm.
time, we don't give our systems a chance. Our immune system is an anti-fragile system. It learns from challenges and it needs those challenges because otherwise, over time, it will grow weak. There's
Mm.
a very good author and philosopher called Nassim Taleb, and
Mhm.
I highly recommend all his books. They are on
Mhm.
risk, but they also have a lot of like really good tips for life on how you live your life well. So
Mm.
one of the things he says is what nature does is right by default. And
Mhm.
if humans want to change something about it, they have to prove that it's better.
Mm.
Let's say, for example, shoes. You
Mm.
have a lot of running shoes with these big cushioning, right?
Mm.
This was the worst that happened to me in terms of running in my life. Because
Mm.
after running a half marathon, I would be in pain for a week.
Mm.
And then I learned that if you remove most of it, if you go barefoot or
Mm.
like a minimalist, like in
Mm.
these kind of shoes,
Mm.
all the pain is gone.
Mm.
So I, instead of running half marathons, I started running marathons, ultra marathons, and
Mm.
all of it without any pain and suffering in the weeks
Mhm.
afterwards. So that was just one instance where if you remove the things that are man-made and
Mm.
with a very simplistic thinking and very little understanding, you can benefit big time.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. When I met you, you had
five
the
fingers.
the 5 finger shoe
Yeah,
things. They're amazing. They actually looked comfortable, and you were raving about them. You're like these. It's like almost barefoot, but you're not stepping on glass and syringes or whatever.
they're still some of my favorites. Since then, I've probably tried like 10 different kinds of minimalist shoes.
Yep.
And there are two more models, like the Luna sandals, which I
Mhm.
like a lot. And there you have the benefit that your foot is not inside.
Ah, right.
So you have fresh air all the time. If you walk through water, it dries very quickly. And
Yep.
just imagine, like, if you could create an environment for like fungi or like bacteria to grow, it would be hot, moist, wet, right?
Yeah, with
And that's
no air.
exactly what we do with shoes. Uh, yeah, yeah.
Exactly. See, this is what I love about you. It's like the first principles way of thinking about things. Even the going back to the interesting thing you were saying about loneliness and being that like that's had an imprint on me as you were saying it. It's just made me realize like, yeah, why did we start doing that differently and thinking about contrasting those two different experiences of a child being close to the parents or whatever, and then a child. I just imagine like a little baby in a dark room on its own. It was the first time I realized like that's so unnatural to do that. We're just
And
gonna
then they have these courses where they show parents how they can stop the crying of their children. I was like, really? Only so you can stay up and watch Netflix for 2 more hours?
yeah, right.
Like, turn off the light, maybe
Yeah.
spend some more time with your children. And because Netflix is also with all these cliffhangers now with episodes, right? They
Yeah,
have
yeah.
also found a way to grab your attention,
Oh,
to
absolutely.
make you come back. And
Yeah.
all those things, or many of those things, I find they are legal, but I don't think they're morally right.
Mm.
I think let's say we also measure things wrong in many ways. If you've followed the elections in the States, there was this candidate Andrew Yang,
Mm.
and
Yeah.
he made one of his big topics was we need the right measurements.
Mm.
And what are we focused on these days?
Mm.
Growth of the economy, GDP,
Mm.
like a lot of nonsense measures. They are
Mm.
maybe part of the story, but we need so much more to have a meaningful and fulfilled life. We need a social environment that is fruitful. We want to be in a safe place. We want to be in a place with a good environment where you don't have a lot of pollution, also noise pollution, where your children can play outside without getting threatened by cars, right? For
Mm.
example, there are a lot of things that we take, that we accept, but that make our lives worse by just focusing on single aspects of the story
Mm.
instead of going things for different measurements like the Human Development Index or the
Mm.
Gini Index. There are a lot of new things out there that show people, okay, we can try to optimize for the Human Development Index instead. And honestly, like when I travel, I prefer to be in places that have a high human development index
Mm.
compared to just a high GDP.
Mm.
Because if you look, for example, in the United States, and I have a lot of friends in the United States,
Mm.
and I love a lot of places there, but they also have some very large problems.
Mm.
For example, when you go running in the morning in Mountain View, Palo Alto, in San Jose, like the mecca of Silicon Valley, right? there are people, homeless people living under bridges
Mm.
next to the billionaires of Silicon Valley.
Mm.
And this, in my opinion, it's not reflected in their GDP.
Mm. Yeah.
And how can you have the richest, the most powerful nation in the world, and having such a shameful situation?
Mm.
Like this is to me outrageous, and I don't see how anybody living in such a society could accept that,
Mm.
because it's just if you think again from a Buddhist perspective in terms of suffering, you create so much suffering, not
Mm.
only in the poor, but also in the rich. Because if you
Mm.
define yourself just by your money and your status and your, then no matter how rich you are, there's always somebody rich as you.
Mm.
And so you can always use your own mind by looking upwards to make yourself more unhappy.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's very sad. And
Yeah.
if we live in more in societies where we measure those things as well,
Mm.
I think we can get to better results.
Mm.
And I don't see that widely adopted yet. But let's say, why doesn't your workplace, why don't they ask you at the end of the day, how was your day? How do you feel today?
Mm.
Just a quick 1 minute questionnaire. You say, I feel exhausted today, but it was rewarding, or it was less rewarding. My job was very repetitive. And you
Mm.
use that in a systems thinking way as feedback to improve also the working conditions, because we spend so much of our time at work. And
Yeah.
why can't we improve that? Why can't we make it a more rewarding experience?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because my work is also my passion.
Mm.
And let's say if I have such a rating at the end of my day, usually it was very rewarding, and I had meaningful things to do, and often I also get the feedback from customers that they like what we do.
Mm.
And the people who work with me, usually I think they also they feel this, and I feel it in people when they are passionate about what they do.
Mm.
And if I could have more of these people to work with, I think I would also even enjoy it more, because
Mm.
I don't like to see people suffer from boring working conditions.
Yeah. 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 Absolutely. Yeah. And I think also relating a lot of this back to what you're saying, which is something that really resonates with me, is this thing of being, you mentioned like being aligned with nature, like the more we get in, I'm always saying this thing like all the time, like that I'm trying to get into alignment with reality. And that could be nature or just understanding whether it's objective reality or a reality that works or whatever. And that alignment with nature in the things that we do, the actions we take. But then there's also this alignment with your own inner nature. Like I talk about this all the time with artists, that really we're not trying to be, you're not trying to be someone else, or you're not comparing yourself to anyone else. You're just trying as much as you can to get in alignment with your own creative nature, your own artistic expression. And when I know that when I'm in that alignment, that's when I'm happiest. Like probably on that tour when I first met you was the first solo tour that I did, and I was playing every night. So I think I played every night for about 6 weeks, which I'd never done before. And about 2 weeks into that, I woke myself up from laughter, and I was like, "Oh, that's weird. I've never had that." Like I woke up, I've got this big grin, and the bed's still shaking from me, like going, "Oh, being happy." And it happened again about 4 days later, and that was when it really dropped in. I was like, it's because I'm really in alignment with my true nature, and it was this strong affirmation to me that I was on the right track, and this is what I need to be doing, and whatever. So, are there things that you either think about when it comes to your own internal nature? Is it something you've consciously like had realizations like, oh, when I'm doing this, that's when I'm at my happiest, I'm fulfilled, I'm contributing, my life has meaning? Because ultimately, I think that's, in my mind, that's the aim, is to figure out a life and lifestyle that brings meaning, passion, purpose, all of that stuff, so that it's fulfilling. So have you had those types of, I don't know, moments, or is anything, yeah, you want to say about that?
Yeah, I agree. And as I said before, I would like people to be able to follow their own intrinsic motivations and passions from a young age on, and not having to see how they can make a living.
Mm.
If we had more like a utopian Star Trek society where it's about contributing, how can I contribute the most?
Mm.
I think where people would have this intrinsic passion and joy for what they do, and they are not they don't have a worth because of their output, but because of who they are and the perspective they bring on life and the unique way they live.
Mm.
I think that would be really something I stand for.
Mm.
And I see it's very hard because like we
Mm.
we have so many ways of getting distracted, and we don't live in a vacuum. It's not like only
Yeah.
you and your ideals there, but there's the world, and you can
Yeah.
kind of take off some of the edges. You can get a rounded stones, right? What
Mm.
you two was singing, yeah.
Mm.
And but it's so easy to get drawn into this race, the rat race,
Mm.
to compare yourself with others and then measure yourself using scales that are not your own, that you shouldn't
Mm.
use, because then that's what makes you unhappy very easily.
Mm.
And I found that in my life when I switched workplace, and let's say the new place was all about relative like status, how you establish yourself compared to others. And then people, they look at which car are you driving. Oh, is this a bigger car? Oh, he drives a big car, and this makes you so sick, right?
Yeah,
And
and it's also another really, uh, again, when you become very objective of it, like, oh, that person drives a bigger car, they're better, they're more important. Like it's such a crazy thought to have, but we do it. It's part of
yes,
our nature, sort of, to figure out where we are in the hierarchy and all of that. But
yeah,
it's
yeah,
a crazy making idea.
true, true. And but it comes probably from, as you say, part of our nature.
Mm.
But we are in a position to recognize this.
Mm.
We can see that with our mind, with a kind of a slower way of thinking, we can notice it, maybe through meditation,
Mm.
and do something about it. We can
Yeah.
build it into our systems to reward other things instead of just what the net worth is.
Yeah.
I'd say there are so many examples out there these days. They don't get the attention they deserve, but they've influenced all societies around the world. People like Linus Torvalds, who invented Linux, and now
Mm.
it runs as Android on almost all phones,
Mm.
and as a embedded system in from space rockets to server centers to mobile devices. It runs on billions of devices,
Mm.
and he's not as well known as Bill Gates, only
Mm.
because Bill Gates made a lot more money.
Mm.
But in terms of impact, I think Linus Torvalds had a huge impact,
Mm.
and there are many others out there who just wanted to contribute because it was their passion, and they didn't give a damn about making a name for themselves.
Mm.
And I think if you can be in such a place that's where you're in more flow states, where you're more passionate, it doesn't mean you're perfect.
Mm.
Uh, Linus Torvalds also has a lot of edges, right?
Yeah.
He came into a lot of trouble himself as well because of it.
Right.
But I believe we should mention those people, mention
Mm.
the contributors, and give them status, give them prestige, or what they want.
Mm.
Because like just numbers, which are easy to measure, like dollars,
Mm.
um, they don't stand for what we care for as humans.
Yeah.
Actually, like let's say Microsoft, I see some change there too, because in the past it was like the enemy number one. if you come in from the open source world, Microsoft were the ones who would keep everything closed, would make an operating system that would make people suffer, and they were enemy number one.
Yeah.
But this picture also changes. They are contributing a big time to open source. They bought a GitHub, and I think they keep it running that way.
Right.
And in that way, not seeing things as black and white is something I try to do more and more, which I'm sometimes also struggling with. But I think if we can do this as a society more and more, measure the right things and try to move there, even working with people from the opposition. Because maybe the opposition is not the real opposition. Maybe they are also humans like you and me, who have family, who want their children to be safe, who want to have a meaningful life.
Yeah.
One of those things which I saw, for example, was at Stanford. I went with a friend to Stanford. They had a lesson on fossil fuels, burning of oil. I was like, wow, why would they have this on an environmental lecture series? And it was very insightful, because they published this data on how to burn different kinds of crude oil more efficiently. So, because there are hundreds of different kinds of crude oil out there, each oil has a different chemical composition. And so the way you burn it actually has a huge influence on the output, the efficiency, how much energy you get out of it, and how much pollution you create. And so if you have those measurements available and you give them to the oil companies, they can burn them more efficiently, getting more energy out of less resources. And so in that situation, you have to overcome the challenge of seeing the fossil fuel industry as the enemy. And maybe you have a much larger impact on the positive impact on the climate than installing huge wind farms or solar plants. Even though, of course, in my opinion, the switch to renewable energies must be a thing we strive, or we accomplish as fast as possible.
Yeah.
But you shouldn't be narrow-minded, but keep the high goals in mind, but talk to everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I totally agree. And it's something you're a great example of, which again is why I wanted to chat to you.
It can be hard, I tell you. 2 years ago, I spent Christmas in Canada in a youth hostel, and there was a guy with his father, and they were hunting there. So for me, as a vegetarian with vegan tendencies, it was tough.
Yeah.
But I talked to him, so I found out that his job is to bring down forest for oil pipelines. And I was like, whoa, whoa. He said, I get well paid. And then he said some things where I was like, maybe it's not too bad. He said, by actually making this, we also make roads for people to explore nature more. I was like, okay, he also enjoys nature, so there's some commonality there. He enjoys time with his father. So I think often you have way more in common than you have differences.
Yes.
But what we are kind of made to believe and to do is focus on the small differences.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. It's a crazy thing. I think you're totally right. In most instances, we have the same outcome in common. Our interests are in common. Our values are in common. But wherever we find this slight little difference, all the attention goes there, all the energy, all the emotion, and even within movements on the left and on the right, there's infighting because I don't know, you're not pure enough on this topic or whatever. And I think that's an important point to try and look for the commonality, look for the positives. There's another part of my album Golden Moment is about unity. It's about unifying ourselves as individuals, but as a culture coming together on common ground and realizing we most of the time we have a shared enemy and it's usually all an authoritarian of authoritarian origin, some when we're being oppressed in some kind of way, normally we have a commonality. I'm not explaining that very well, but unity is so much more powerful than figuring out how we're divided. It's a wasted exercise. It doesn't really move us
True.
forward very well. It's a
Yeah.
huge waste of human energy.
And at the same time, like what we are doing here now, I read that on edge.org a couple of years ago. We have a case-based reasoning party. So a lot of our reasoning comes from experiences, from anecdotes, right? And so we are exchanging ideas. But at the same time, we live in this, with our heads, we live in this platonic world of concepts. And our concepts, they are pretty rough often, right? So if I say the word coffee, it means something slightly different to me than to you, because my exposure to different kinds of coffees are different to yours.
Yeah, I didn't think of that when you said coffee, but you're holding something that's completely different. Yeah.
Yeah, that's in Korea, it's this, right? Yeah. And in Ethiopia, it's something different again, where they put a lot of sugar and maybe they make it with their hands, right? And there was a good book called Surfaces and Essences, 700 pages just on that topic, but so revealing about how our thinking works and how our concepts are born out of analogies, and how each analogy is different per person. And then we might have the same word for it, but it means something different to person A, to B, and then you can start fighting over it.
Yes.
And in a recent book I just finished called Thinking in Systems by Donella Meadows, is a classic on systems thinking. There was so much truth in this book. It was talking in conceptual, in words, of course, what a book usually does. But she always said words are a very rough marker, and reality is so much more complex than anything you could cover in a conceptual space.
Yes.
And if you think in systems, and if you want to understand systems and be part of it, engaged part of it, I think it's one of the first lessons to learn is that there's way more complexity than we can put in simple systems or in simple words or terms, right?
Yeah.
And
I completely agree. It's another thing. Whenever I come in contact with a new idea or a concept, or I believe, I'm reviewing a belief that I have. I try to come at it from the angle that whatever topic I'm thinking about, it is far more complex than I'm making it out to be. That I even know there are so many nuances to any topic, social topic or political topic, that I know I don't have 100% of the information. I probably have less than 1% of it. And it's very humbling, because you have to go, okay, I have to now, if I want to speak about this topic with any level of assurity, I have to go and read some books and do some research and research the opposing arguments and see if there's anything there that makes sense. And usually, if anyone goes through this process, like you're sort of a nodding of knowing here, that as soon as you do that, you realize there's this huge space in between that no one's talking about, no one's considering. We just want, it's all good or it's all bad, but there's so much in the middle, and I think it's a good systems thinking way of going, whatever I'm encountering, I'm going to assume it's far more complex than I'm making it out to be.
I have a question, because you were talking about unity and that being part of one of the songs on your album. Like, what other topics are there? Because honestly, I've listened to it, I've loved it, but I had it while I was on the job, so it was running in the background, and so I definitely need to get more in touch with the lyrics.
Yeah.
The album.
So, well, the main theme of the album is like some of the stuff you're sort of getting to, but it's this idea of self-transcendence. It's figuring out, what are my challenges and flaws and the patterns that I continue to run over and over that keep me stuck or keep me in suffering, and how do I find a way to move beyond all of that? So that's the main theme of the album. Another theme is sort of from the title of the album, Golden Moment, which is this idea that you also kind of mentioned this briefly, the idea that when there's an event, something happens, we tend to be very critical of it, or we look at the negative of it, but there's always an opportunity to turn it into something really positive by reframing it, or looking for what the lesson was, or how I'm now benefiting from it, even though I didn't enjoy it at the time. So that's the idea of golden moment. It's not actually that that every moment should be golden and everything should be easy. It's this kind of alchemical idea, I suppose. Whatever life throws at you, whatever muck it throws at you, to have a process inside of you where you can transform it into gold. I think that's something that I have been thinking about, is like this master variable in a fulfilling life is being able to take whatever life is throwing at you and be able to do this process where you can say, this thing's happening and I'm not enjoying it, but there must be something here that is good, and I'm going to consciously take my mind to go and look for that stuff. It comes back to what you were saying of that in life there's suffering. Like one of the things, like in life, well, I think of this thing that life is painful, but suffering is optional. So we do have a choice in whether we want to overlay a narrative, a negative narrative that is disempowering, or we have the choice to overlay a positive narrative.
Yeah, you can add an additional layer of suffering by being unhappy about your suffering.
yeah, like I don't want to be suffering. Why me? I get, why does this have to happen to me?
Yeah, and then you regret things. Like I see so many people doing that. I'm like, wow, maybe give in more, be more in the flow, and just be. I find just existence per se, right, is so stunning. Like this one thought that came to me recently, which I talk about sometime these days, is all the places and moments you've been at in your life, and maybe you can remember thousands of those. Like maybe a cafe place you've been sitting, or a nice mountaintop, or a small trail, or a home of a friend. All those places, there's something going on at this moment too. Maybe there's some consciousness there, or maybe not, but just the sheer immensity of that, that we have this incredibly parallel world where there are so many threads going on, and you have the opportunity to visit some of those places and bring your consciousness there. This is just so incredible.
Yeah,
like just imagine that flat in Berlin, right, where we stayed. There's something happening there right now. Somebody's maybe living there, maybe a mother with her child, or you don't know what, right? And they're having a conscious experience right now. And this just blows my mind, the thought of it.
No, I totally agree. I really love that, and I think it's it's probably one reason we connected, is just this real appreciation for life. Just I'm so excited about it, that it's an option. And it really, as far as we know, it beats the alternative, and I think it's probably a really beautiful place to end this, leave people on that note, that life is precious, it's precarious, there's so much to experience. So we don't want to do it from a place of suffering. We want to find a way to get in alignment with ourselves, with each other, with nature. It's
don't panic, take it easy, and enjoy. Like don't make your own suffering up here. Don't right? Mijo, thank you so much. It was great talking to you.
The pleasure. And, we could definitely, I'm sure, in the next one we do, we'll see if we can beat Joe Rogan's longest podcast. I'm sure we can do it.
Yeah.
If anyone's going to do it, I think it's us. Cool, man.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks so much.
Have a safe time over there, and we'll talk to you soon.
You too. Bye bye.
Yeah.
안녕하세요.
So there you have the conversation with Daniel Lang. He is a superb human being. I hope you found that interesting, and I hope you kept up with all of the different directions he went in. And yeah, it's nice to share these excellent human beings that I've come in contact with over the years, and Daniel's a great one. So there were a number of things Daniel talked about in this episode that I will link to below. So there were some books and people and podcasts to check out. So if you're interested in any of the ideas he was talking about, you can check that out. We also talked a little bit about my album and some of the themes and things like that. If you're interested in hearing some of that album, you can get a free download of 3 of the tracks by going to mijobiscan.com/free music, and you can actually check out the entire album at mijobiscan.com. And if you're up for it, you can buy a CD, limited edition signed copy of the CD, which I will send to you anywhere in the world. And you can hear it all there. So thanks again for checking this out. Please rate it, review it, give it a thumbs up, leave me a comment below, say hi, share it with a friend, do all those cool things. And thanks again for tuning in, and I will catch you on the next episode. Peace out.